Do not touch her. She is the CEO. The shout cracked across the marble lobby of the Grand Halston Hotel, just as Evelyn Hartwell's knees weakened beneath the white glare of the conference lights. One moment, she was standing behind a glass podium, smiling for investors, promising a $900 million medical breakthrough that would change American hospitals forever. The next, her fingers trembled, her vision narrowed, and the applause folded into a dull ocean roar. Executives rushed forward. Security moved fast. Cameras lifted. But Evelyn, the woman no one in Chicago dared interrupt, reached blindly through the crowd and caught the hand of a man in a gray maintenance uniform. Caleb Whitmore had been kneeling beside an open electrical panel, a screwdriver in one hand, a flashlight near his knee, trying to fix a flickering row of emergency lights before the evening reception began. He did not know her schedule. He did not know her net worth. He did not even know, at first, that the pale woman gripping his hand like a lifeline owned half the medical technology contracts being discussed upstairs. He only knew her palm was cold, her breathing was shallow, and her eyes carried the terrified look of someone who had been strong for too long. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he asked softly. "Step back," a man in a navy suit snapped. "She does not need a janitor." Caleb looked up once, calm and steady. "Then why is she holding my hand?" The words landed quietly, but the lobby changed around them. The laughter stopped before it could start. The guards hesitated. Evelyn's grip tightened. Her lips parted, and in a voice so small it did not belong to boardrooms or billion-dollar decisions, she whispered, "Please, do not leave." Caleb set the screwdriver down. He slipped off his work jacket, folded it carefully, and placed it beneath her head until the hotel medical team arrived with a portable stretcher. Someone said to call an ambulance. Someone else said to clear the cameras. Grant Maddox, her chief financial officer, kept repeating that this was bad optics, terrible optics, unacceptable optics. Caleb ignored all of it. He shifted his body just enough to block the harshest light from her face, then turned to the nearest security guard and said, "Give her room to breathe." There was no command in his voice, only certainty. And somehow people obeyed. When the hotel physician reached them, he checked Evelyn's pulse, asked 2 quick questions, and frowned with relief. "Severe exhaustion," he said. "Likely sleep deprivation. She needs quiet, not a crowd." The physician looked at her hand still locked around Caleb's. "Does she know him?" Grant answered first. "No," but Evelyn stirred the moment Caleb tried to pull away, panic flickering across her face even before her eyes opened. Caleb stopped. The doctor studied that small reaction, then nodded toward the private recovery suite behind the conference hall. "Let him walk with us. For now." So Caleb walked beside the stretcher through a side corridor lined with framed awards and silent hotel staff, his rough hand still held by a woman whose signature could move millions. Inside the recovery suite, the lights were dimmed. The curtains were drawn. The monitors gave soft, steady sounds instead of alarms. Evelyn's breathing slowed. Her fingers remained wrapped around his. Caleb did not pull away. He sat in a chair beside the narrow medical bed while Grant paced outside the glass door, while Marianne Vale whispered into a phone, while the gala emptied into rumors. Caleb did not look embarrassed. He did not look proud. He looked present, the kind of present most people forget how to be. Minutes passed, then 20, then 40. The physician checked once more and said, "Let her sleep if she can." So Caleb stayed. He stayed while the string quartet packed its instruments beyond the walls. He stayed while snow tapped softly against the hotel windows like 1,000 small fingers asking to be let in. Nearly 3 hours later, Evelyn Hartwell opened her eyes. For a moment, she did not recognize the quiet room, the folded blanket, or the circle of anxious faces beyond the door. Then she looked down and saw her hand still resting in Caleb Whitmore's, rough with work, warm with patience, steady as a promise he had never spoken. On the table beside her was a paper cup of water, her silk scarf, folded neatly, and a note written on the back of a maintenance request form. "Your meeting starts in 12 minutes. I kept everyone quiet." Evelyn read it once. Then again. Her throat tightened. Caleb stood, gave a respectful nod, and picked up his toolbox as if he had done nothing worth remembering. But Evelyn could not speak. Because for the first time in 11 months, she had slept without fear. And the man who gave her that peace had already turned to leave. Caleb had almost reached the service corridor when Grant Maddox's polished shoes cut in front of his work boots. The contrast was small, but everyone nearby seemed to notice it. Black leather against scuffed brown. Power against labor. A man who gave orders against a man who fixed what others never saw. Mr. Whitmore, Grant said, reading the name stitched over Caleb's pocket like it tasted cheap. The company appreciates your assistance. He held out a cream-colored envelope with Evelyn Hartwell's initials pressed into the flap. Caleb looked at it, then at Grant. What is that? A thank you. For what? Grant smiled without warmth. For sitting on a floor and holding a hand. Apparently that is worth something now. A few hotel staff members lowered their eyes. One young receptionist stopped typing. Caleb did not move toward the envelope. Behind them, Evelyn stood near the private elevator with a blanket over her shoulders, pale but upright now, watching the exchange through the soft blur of exhaustion. She should have said something. She knew she should have, but old habits held her still. In her world, every kindness came with paperwork, every favor came with a hidden invoice, and every man who stepped close eventually reached for more than he had earned. Caleb wiped his hands slowly on a folded rag. I did not do it for money. Grant gave a quiet laugh. Everyone says that before they name a number. Caleb's eyes lifted, not angry, not wounded, only steady. Then you have been around the wrong everyone. The lobby felt quieter than before. The kind of quiet that does not announce itself, but gathers, chair by chair, breath by breath. Grant's jaw tightened. Let us not make this noble, Mr. Whitmore. You were in the right place at the right time. That is all. Caleb nodded once. Maybe. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out Evelyn's silk scarf, folded with the careful square corners of a man who respected things that did not belong to him. He placed it on the small table beside Grant instead of handing it to him. She dropped this. Evelyn's fingers curled around the blanket. Caleb looked past Grant then, directly at her. His voice softened. You were tired. That is not a weakness. It is just a warning. No one spoke. For a woman who had sat through hostile acquisitions, Senate hearings, and boardrooms filled with men twice her age, Evelyn Hartwell found herself unable to answer a maintenance worker in a gray uniform. Caleb gave a respectful nod, picked up his toolbox, and turned away. Grant slid the envelope back into his jacket with a smirk. Careful, Evelyn, he murmured as Caleb disappeared toward the service hall. Men like that learn quickly when kindness gets them near power. Evelyn kept staring at the empty doorway. Men like what? She asked. Grant blinked. Poor men with sad stories. She turned to him then, and for a second the old CO returned to her eyes. You do not know his story. Neither do you. That was the part that stayed with her. Neither do you. Outside the hotel, the night had hardened into a clean Chicago cold. Caleb stepped through the rear exit and crossed the alley where delivery trucks idled under orange lamps. He checked his watch. 11:43. The last bus toward South Ashland would come in 7 minutes if the snow did not slow it down. He had promised Lucy he would be home before midnight, and promises mattered more than pride. He sat on the metal bench beneath the bus shelter, toolbox at his feet, shoulders bent from the long shift. From his coat pocket, he took out a small cloth doll with one yarn braid coming loose. Lucy had tucked it there that morning for luck, the way children do when they think love can travel in pockets. Caleb smiled faintly and fixed the braid with his rough fingers. Across the street, unseen behind the tinted glass of a black company car, Evelyn watched him. She had asked her driver to pause for no reason she could explain. She saw the toolbox, the old coat, the tired man waiting in the snow. Then she saw the doll in his hands, and something inside her shifted. Not pity, not curiosity, something quieter. Something more dangerous to a woman who had spent years keeping her heart locked behind contracts and glass walls. Caleb did not look like a man chasing power. He looked like a father trying to make it home. By the time Caleb reached his apartment, the snow had turned the sidewalk silver. The building was old, for stories of red brick and tired windows, the kind of place where radiators knocked through the night, and neighbors knew which floorboards complained. He climbed the stairs quietly, one hand around the toolbox, the other around the repaired doll in his pocket. At the third-floor landing, Mrs. Alvarez cracked her door open before he could knock. She was 72, 5 feet tall, and somehow carried the authority of a church bell. She tried to stay awake for you, she whispered. Caleb smiled with the kind of gratitude that did not need decoration. Thank you for watching her. She drew again, Mrs. Alvarez said. Big picture. Strange one. Caleb stepped into his apartment and found Lucy asleep at the kitchen table, cheek resting beside a box of crayons, one sock slipping off her heel. Her inhaler sat within reach. Her math worksheet was half finished, and beneath her small hand was a drawing that made Caleb stop breathing for a second. It showed a woman in a black dress lying under a storm cloud of gray scribbles, while a man in work boots sat beside her, holding her hand. Above them, Lucy had drawn two yellow circles, not quite suns, not quite halos, just light where darkness should have been. Caleb touched the edge of the paper. Sweetheart, he whispered. Lucy stirred, blinking at him through sleep. Daddy, I am home. Did the doll help? He took the cloth doll from his pocket and placed it beside her. She did her job. Lucy smiled, then pointed weakly to the picture. That is the lady you helped. Caleb glanced at the drawing again. You were supposed to be doing fractions. I did some. Some is not a number. It is when you are tired. He almost laughed, but the softness caught in his throat. He lifted her gently, careful of her breathing, and carried her toward the small bedroom they shared since winter made the front room too cold. Lucy's arms circled his neck. Was she scared? Caleb paused in the doorway. I think so. Then I am glad you stayed. Those words followed him long after he tucked her under the quilt and turned the nightlight toward the wall. Caleb stood in the dim apartment, surrounded by second-hand furniture, unpaid bills clipped to the refrigerator, and the quiet proof of a life he had not chosen but still honored. Once, he had drawn medical designs on glass boards in rooms full of brilliant people. Once, men in suits had shaken his hand and said he was going to change the future of cardiac care. Once, his wife Hannah had danced barefoot in that kitchen while Lucy kicked inside her belly, and the whole world seemed reparable. Then came the hospital rooms, the waiting, the monitors, the kind of silence that does not calm a man, but hollows him out. After Hannah was gone, Caleb learned that grief did not always roar. Sometimes it packed school lunches, paid rent late, and taught a little girl how to braid a doll's hair when her mother was no longer there to do it. The next morning, Lucy carried the drawing to school in her purple backpack. Caleb did not know it had slipped between the pages of her charity art folder, the one her teacher planned to send to a children's wellness program sponsored by Hartwell Medical Systems. He only knew the morning was cold. Lucy needed her red scarf, and the bus would not wait for a father lost in memory. At Lincoln Ridge Elementary, Lucy's teacher, Miss Palmer, walked between the desks collecting artwork for the hospital fundraiser. When she reached Lucy, she stopped at the drawing. This is powerful, honey. Is this your mom? Lucy shook her head. No, ma'am. Then who is she? Lucy looked at the woman in black, then at the man with the glowing hands. Her voice was small, but certain. She is someone who does not know she needs to be loved yet. Miss Palmer did not know what to say. Some sentences arrived too old for a 7-year-old mouth. She only placed the drawing carefully into the folder with the others. 2 hours later, across downtown Chicago, that same folder landed on Evelyn Hartwell's conference table, between a quarterly risk report and a product launch schedule that could decide the future of her company. Evelyn opened it with tired hands, expecting children's hearts, rainbows, and thank you notes. Then she saw herself lying in darkness, held by a man in work boots. The room blurred. Grant kept talking about investor confidence. Marianne Vale, her longtime assistant, watched Evelyn's face change. But Evelyn could not hear either of them. She was staring at the title Lucy had written in blue crayon at the bottom of the page, The Hand That Stayed. Cancel my noon call, Evelyn said, still staring at the blue crayon letters. Grant stopped mid-sentence. Around the conference table, 3 vice presidents looked up from their tablets, as if the ceiling had shifted. Evelyn Hartwell did not cancel investor calls. She moved people, numbers, hospitals, and deadlines with the cold precision of a surgeon. But now her hand rested over a child's drawing like it was a fragile thing with a heartbeat. Grant forced a laugh. Evelyn, the West Coast investors are already waiting. Then they can wait. For what? She closed the folder. For something human. The room went still. Marianne Vale lowered her eyes, hiding the smallest smile. 20 minutes later, Evelyn stepped out of the Hartwell Medical Tower without a public relations team, without security, without the armored distance that usually traveled around her like invisible glass. She wore a camel coat over her black suit, her hair pulled back, her face bare of the boardroom mask. Her driver opened the door to the black company car, but she paused before getting in. "Lincoln Ridge Elementary," she said, "and call the main office on the way. Tell them I am coming as the sponsor representative for the Children's Hospital Art Program." No cameras. No announcement. The school sat on a quiet street lined with bare maple trees and shoveled sidewalks. It was not poor, not rich, just ordinary in the way real American life often is. Crossing guards in orange vests, minivans in the pickup lane, lost mittens hanging from a fence. Evelyn stood outside the front doors for a moment, unsure what to do with herself. She could negotiate with a hospital chain worth $2 billion, but the locked school entrance and the small security camera above the buzzer made her feel like an intruder. She pressed the button and waited. "Can I help you?" a voice asked through the intercom. "My name is Evelyn Hartwell. I am here about the children's art folder for the Hartwell Medical Hospital fundraiser. Your office should have received a call." A soft buzz sounded. Inside, the secretary checked her identification, had her sign the visitor log, printed a badge, and called Miss Palmer before opening the inner door. No one rushed. No one bowed their head. No one whispered her name as if money could excuse procedure. For once, Evelyn was grateful for rules that protected someone smaller than herself. While she waited, she looked down the hallway at paper snowflakes taped to the walls, lunch menus, spelling words, crayon sans. For the first time in years, she was only a woman standing in a school office, holding a drawing that had seen her more clearly than most adults ever had. Miss Palmer arrived with cautious warmth. "Miss Hartwell." "Evelyn, please." The teacher nodded, still careful. "Lucy is in art right now. I can ask her to come to the office conference room if this is related to the fundraiser. I would rather not bring visitors directly into the classroom." Evelyn exhaled, almost relieved by the boundary. "That is exactly right. Thank you." A few minutes later, Lucy Whitmore appeared in the doorway with a hall pass clipped to her sweater and a streak of blue marker on one finger. Her red scarf was looped twice around her neck. Her hair was slightly uneven on one side, the honest work of a father doing his best before sunrise. She stopped when she saw Evelyn. Recognition came instantly. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with the directness only children possess. "You are the lady who slept on my dad's hand." Miss Palmer coughed softly. The secretary suddenly found great interest in a stack of attendance forms. Evelyn's face warmed, but she did not look away. "Yes," she said. "I suppose I am." Lucy studied her for a long second. "Are you feeling better?" No one in Evelyn's company had asked it that simply. Not how it affected the stock. Not whether the press noticed. Not whether the launch could continue. Just better. Evelyn swallowed. "I am trying to be." Lucy nodded like that was a serious and acceptable answer. "Daddy says trying counts when you are tired." Evelyn stepped closer, careful to remain seated near the conference table so she would not tower over her. "Your drawing was beautiful." It was true. "How did you know?" Lucy looked down at the paper heart she had brought from art class, then back up with those clear little eyes. "Because my dad only holds on like that when someone is about to break." The small office seemed to soften around them. The copier stopped humming. Miss Palmer's hand stilled on the doorframe. Evelyn felt the words enter a place no money, no title, no applause had ever reached. "Did he say that?" she whispered. Lucy shook her head. "No, he does not say sad things much. But I know." Evelyn looked through the office window at the gray winter light lying across the playground. In that moment, she understood something about Caleb Whitmore that the envelope, the uniform, and Grant's contempt had all failed to see. He had not stayed because she was important. He had stayed because he recognized pain. And somewhere in his quiet life, he had learned the holy discipline of not walking away. That afternoon, Evelyn did something she had not done in years. She left the building without knowing exactly where she was going next. The company car moved through Chicago traffic while the city dragged itself toward evening, brake lights glowing red on wet pavement, buses sighing at corners, office workers folding themselves into winter coats. In her lap rested Lucy's drawing, protected inside a clear folder Miss Palmer had given her. Evelyn kept touching the edge of it with her thumb, as if the paper might vanish if she stopped believing in it. "Find everything public on Caleb Whitmore," she said quietly. Mary Ann, seated beside her, did not ask why. She simply opened her tablet and began searching. At first, there was almost nothing. A current address. A maintenance employment record. A small apartment lease. Then Marianne's finger stopped. Evelyn. The tone made Evelyn turn. What? Marianne hesitated. He was not always maintenance. On the screen was an old photograph from a medical engineering conference in Boston 8 years earlier. Caleb stood younger, clean-shaven, wearing a navy blazer instead of gray work clothes, one hand resting on a prototype heart valve display. Beside him stood a woman with soft brown hair and a warm smile, her hand tucked into his arm. The caption read, Caleb Whitmore, lead design engineer, and Hannah Whitmore, patient advocate, present low-pressure pediatric valve concept. Evelyn stared at the words. Lead design engineer. Pediatric valve. Her breath slowed, then tightened. That cannot be right. Marianne scrolled carefully. There were fragments after that. A patent filing. A hospital innovation grant. A local article praising his early work in safer cardiac support for children. Then the record seemed to fall off a cliff. No new papers. No interviews. No executive role. No lawsuit. Just absence. Evelyn looked at Hannah's face on the screen and understood, before Marianne even found the obituary. His wife? Evelyn whispered. Marianne nodded, her voice gentler now. Hannah Whitmore. Passed away 6 years ago after complications following heart surgery. Caleb withdrew from the project shortly after. The city outside blurred behind the glass. Evelyn thought of the way Lucy had said, My dad only holds on like that when someone is about to break. Not because he had been taught tenderness by comfort, but because grief had carved it into him. Take me to him, Evelyn said. Caleb was leaving the hotel service entrance when the car pulled up near the alley. He stopped when he saw Evelyn step out, not surprised exactly, but guarded in the quiet way of a man who had learned that wealthy people rarely appeared without wanting something. Ms. Hartwell, he said. Caleb, she replied, and his name sounded different in her mouth now, less like an employee file and more like a door she had been afraid to knock on. He glanced toward the street. If this is about last night, you do not owe me anything. I know. If it is about the school, Lucy did not mean any harm. I know that too. Then why are you here? The question was simple. The answer was not. Evelyn held the clear folder against her coat. Snow gathered lightly in her hair, but she did not seem to notice. You designed pediatric heart valves. Caleb's face changed so slightly most people would have missed it. But Evelyn saw it. A flicker behind the eyes. A door closing. A long time ago. Why did you stop? He looked past her toward the hotel dumpsters, the loading dock, the narrow strip of sky between buildings. Because my wife got sick. Hannah. His eyes returned to hers. For the first time, there was pain in them. Not loud. Not asking for pity. Just present. You looked me up. I had to understand. No, Caleb said softly. You wanted to. The words did not accuse her. Somehow that made them harder to hear. Evelyn lowered her gaze. You are right. A delivery truck rumbled by, splashing slush near the curb. Caleb shifted his toolbox to his other hand. Hannah believed hospitals should not feel like factories. She used to sit with families when doctors had no more words. She said machines could keep a heart moving, but dignity kept a person human. His voice caught once, then steadied. After she died, I could not sit in those rooms anymore. I could not listen to monitors and pretend I was still building miracles. Evelyn stood very still. You could have fought. I did fight. Caleb's answer came quiet as breath. I fought to get out of bed. I fought to pack Lucy's lunch. I fought to stop hating every hallway that smelled like antiseptic. I chose not to let my daughter grow up beside a father who had nothing left but bitterness. The snow kept falling. For a moment, Evelyn had no CEO answer, no polished sentence, no shield. Then Marianne's voice from the car broke the silence. Evelyn, she said carefully, holding up the tablet. You need to see this. Evelyn turned. On the screen was an internal schematic from Hartwell Medical's upcoming launch. A flow regulator, a pressure timing design, a tiny detail, almost hidden beneath new branding and updated language. Caleb saw it from several feet away. His shoulders went still. Evelyn looked from the screen to him. Caleb. He did not step closer. He did not raise his voice. But the color drained from his face as he whispered, That is Hannah's design. For 3 seconds, no one moved. The alley behind the Grand Halston seemed to hold its breath, with snow settling on the black car, the loading dock, Caleb's toolbox, and the screen glowing in Marianne's hand. Evelyn looked at the schematic again, then at Caleb. Are you certain? she asked, though her voice already knew the answer. Caleb did not reach for the tablet. He did not need to. Hannah drew that timing curve on a yellow legal pad at our kitchen table, he said. Lucy was too. She spilled applesauce on the corner. I remember because Hannah laughed and said maybe every medical breakthrough needed a little breakfast on it. Marianne's face tightened. Evelyn slowly took the tablet from her and enlarged the image. There it was, hidden inside the polished launch file. A softened pressure delay sequence for fragile pediatric hearts, redesigned with Hartwell logos, executive signatures, and a patent transfer number Evelyn had never personally reviewed. Grant Maddox had reviewed it. Grant had approved it. Grant had rushed it. Caleb stepped back as if distance could protect him from the past. I am not accusing you, he said. I left that world. Evelyn looked up sharply. Someone brought your work into mine. Then ask them why. I will. Careful, Caleb said, and the word carried more concern than bitterness. People with expensive offices rarely leave fingerprints where ordinary people can see them. The next morning, Grant moved first. By 8:15, Evelyn received a message from him marked urgent. By 9, a special invitation had gone out for Caleb Whitmore to attend Hartwell Medical's evening product preview as a community guest. By 10, a short biography had been drafted without Caleb's consent, calling him a hotel maintenance worker whose kindness reflected the company's values. It said nothing about engineering, nothing about Hannah, nothing about the design. Grant had built a stage, and he intended to place Caleb on it like a decoration. When Caleb received the invitation through hotel management, he almost threw it away. Lucy found it on the kitchen counter after school, beside a bowl of tomato soup and her spelling list. Are you going? She asked. No, why? Because rooms like that do not invite men like me unless they want something. Lucy climbed onto the chair across from him, her red scarf still around her neck. Maybe Miss Evelyn wants you there. Caleb stirred the soup, though it did not need stirring. Maybe. Do you trust her? That question was harder than it should have been. Caleb thought of Evelyn standing in the snow, holding Lucy's drawing like it mattered. He thought of her eyes when she saw Hannah's design. He thought of the way she had not defended him the first night, and the way she was beginning, perhaps, to learn courage. I do not know yet, he said. Lucy nodded with the seriousness of a child who understood more than adults preferred. Mommy used to say people can learn. Caleb went still. You remember that? A little. She looked down. I want to see the place where the hearts are. That was why, just after 6 that evening, Caleb entered the Hartwell Medical Innovation Center wearing his only dark jacket, Lucy beside him in a blue dress under her winter coat. The lobby rose around them in glass and steel, full of investors, surgeons, reporters, and executives with voices smooth enough to hide knives. At the center of the room stood the new pediatric cardiac support device beneath a clear display case, lit like a crown jewel. Evelyn saw Caleb arrive and started toward him, but Grant reached the microphone first. Ladies and gentlemen, he said warmly, before we unveil tomorrow's medicine, let us honor a simple man whose small act of kindness reminded our CEO what compassion looks like. A soft laugh moved through part of the crowd. Caleb felt it. Lucy felt it too. Her small hand tightened around his. Grant gestured toward the stage. Mr. Whitmore, perhaps you can tell us how holding someone's hand qualifies a person to stand beside medical innovation. The room gave a polite, poisonous chuckle. Evelyn's face went pale. Grant, she said, warning in her voice. But Caleb was already walking. Not quickly, not proudly, just steadily, with Lucy's drawing folded inside his jacket pocket. He reached the front, looked once at Grant, then passed him to the device under the glass. The laughter thinned. Something in Caleb's posture changed, not into anger, but into memory. He stepped closer to the display, studied the regulator housing, the valve chamber, the timing module. Then he turned toward Evelyn, his voice low, clear, and impossible to ignore. Your valve timing is wrong. The room froze. Grant smiled like a man trying to laugh at thunder. Excuse me. Caleb looked back at the device, and the grief in his eyes became something sharper than pain. If this goes into a child under 50 pounds, the pressure delay could fail under stress. Not every time. Just enough to make tomorrow's miracle a headline no parent should ever read. The silence that followed did not feel empty. It felt like a room full of people suddenly hearing the ticking of a clock they had ignored for too long. Grant Maddox laughed once, sharp and dry. Well, That is quite a statement from a man who repairs light fixtures. A few people smiled because they were supposed to. No one truly laughed. Evelyn stepped forward, eyes locked on Caleb. Explain it. Grant turned quickly. Evelyn, we are not doing this here. Yes, she said, her voice calm enough to frighten him. We are. Caleb looked at Lucy. She stood near Marianne, clutching her small purse with both hands, trying to be brave in a room that had made her father small. Caleb reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded napkin from the refreshment table, then took a black marker from beside the guest book. He did not ask for the stage screen. He did not ask for permission. He placed the napkin on the glass display case and drew 3 simple curves. A child's heart does not respond like an adult's heart, he said, especially under stress, especially under anesthesia, especially when weight and pressure shift faster than the regulator can soften the delay. One engineer near the front frowned. Another leaned closer. Grant folded his arms. That is a dramatic oversimplification. Caleb nodded. It has to be. The truth should be able to survive simple language. The room tightened. Evelyn glanced toward the lead engineer, Dr. Melissa Rowe, whose face had gone still in a way no executive wanted to see. Caleb drew a small box, then a second line beneath it. Your model assumes the compensating pulse occurs after stabilization. But in the original design, Hannah moved the delay before stabilization because pediatric flow drops faster than standard simulations predict. Dr. Rowe took one step forward. How would you know what the original design assumed? Grant spoke before Caleb could answer. Because he is guessing. This is emotional theater. Caleb looked at him then, not with anger, but with something quieter and heavier. My wife wrote the original assumption. The words did not boom through the room. They settled. And once they settled, there was nowhere for Grant to hide from them. Evelyn turned to Dr. Rowe. Run the stress condition. Now. Now. A technician moved to the side console. The large wall screen flickered on, showing the device model in blue and white. Investors shifted uncomfortably. Reporters lowered their phones, then raised them again more carefully. Grant moved toward Evelyn. This is reckless. You are letting a maintenance worker derail a launch. Evelyn did not look at him. No, I am letting a father speak before another father has to pray beside a hospital bed. Caleb's jaw tightened at that, but he stayed composed. The simulation began. At first, the numbers held. Pressure stable. Delay acceptable. Flow within range. Grant's confidence returned in the shape of a thin smile. Then Dr. Rowe adjusted the weight parameter to 46 pounds, added stress variance, and ran the secondary model. The blue line trembled. The yellow line dipped. A red warning flashed once, then again. Dr. Rowe whispered. No, Evelyn faced her. Say it clearly. The engineer swallowed. Under specific pediatric stress conditions, he is right. The delay can fail. The room changed all at once. Not loudly. No gasps. Worthy of a movie. Just a collective stillness, the kind that arrives when pride realizes it has been standing on unsafe ground. Grant's smile vanished. Caleb capped the marker and stepped away from the display. Do not launch it tomorrow, he said. Fix it. Credit Hannah if you want. Ignore me if you need to. But do not put that device near a child until someone honors the part of the design that protected them. Evelyn looked at the napkin, the 3 curves, the tiny map of a disaster avoided. Then she looked at Caleb, the man they had dressed up as a symbol of kindness, while stealing the life's work buried inside his grief. You just saved this company, she said softly. Caleb shook his head. No, I saved the children your company forgot to imagine. Lucy walked to him then, small shoes tapping against the polished floor. She slipped her hand into his. For the first time that evening, Caleb looked uncertain. Not because of the executives. Not because of Grant. Because his daughter had seen the world try to mock him, and he had hoped she would never have to. Lucy looked up at him and whispered, Daddy. The room got quiet. Caleb squeezed her hand gently. Across from them, Evelyn's eyes filled, but she did not let the tears fall. Not yet. She turned toward the crowd, toward the cameras, toward the board members waiting for someone else to decide what courage should cost. This launch is suspended, she said. Grant stepped forward. Evelyn, you cannot be serious. She finally looked at him. I have never been more serious in my life. By midnight, Hartwell Medical's launch floor was no longer a celebration. It had become something closer to a courtroom without a judge. The champagne glasses remained untouched on silver trays. The blue lights around the suspended device still glowed, but now they looked less like triumph and more like warning. Board members gathered in tight circles, whispering into phones. Engineers crowded around the simulation console, running the model again and again, hoping the numbers would change. They did not. Evelyn stood at the center of it all with Lucy's drawing in one hand and Caleb's napkin sketch in the other. One was made in crayon. One was made in marker. Somehow, both had told the truth before the adults in expensive suits were willing to. Grant Maddox paced near the conference doors, speaking low and fast to the chairman. "This is controllable," he said. "We delay 48 hours, rewrite the technical note, and keep this from becoming public panic." Evelyn turned slowly. "Public panic?" Grant froze. "You know what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean." Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. "You mean we protect the image before we protect the child?" No one moved. Grant smiled thinly. "That is unfair." "Then make it fair. Show me the acquisition file." His expression changed by less than an inch, but Evelyn saw it. Caleb saw it too. Men who live by hiding things often forget how visible fear becomes when truth walks in. Marion stepped forward with a tablet and a stack of printed documents. "I already pulled the archive transfer records," she said. "The pediatric valve concept came through a shell licensing agreement 3 years ago. The original contributor names were removed during consolidation." Evelyn did not look away from Grant. "Who authorized that?" Grant lifted his chin. "Legal restructuring is standard after intellectual property acquisition." "Who authorized it?" she repeated. The room was so still the heating system sounded loud above them. Finally, Marianne touched the tablet and sent the file to the wall screen. There it appeared in black and white. Maddox executive approval. Beneath it, a red-line note read, "Remove legacy attribution to avoid future royalty complications." For a moment, Grant looked almost offended that paper had betrayed him. "That note lacks context," he said. Caleb stood near the back with Lucy pressed close to his side. He did not step forward. He did not demand anything. That was what made the moment heavier. The man whose life had been erased was not shouting to be restored. He was simply watching others decide whether they still had a conscience. Evelyn walked to the microphone Grant had used to humiliate him less than an hour earlier. She looked at the investors, the engineers, the reporters, the board. Then she looked at Caleb. "Hartwell Medical was built to save hearts," she said. "But somewhere along the way, we forgot that honoring a heart matters too." Grant moved quickly. "Evelyn, do not do this publicly." She turned to him. "You made the mockery public. The correction will be public too." Her words landed clean. No rage. No performance. Just justice with its coat on. She faced the room again. "Effective immediately, Grant Maddox is suspended pending independent review. The pediatric device launch is halted until a full safety correction is completed. All records connected to this design will be reopened, and the foundational contribution of Hannah Whitmore and Caleb Whitmore will be restored." Caleb lowered his eyes at Hannah's name. Lucy looked up at him, confused by the tears he refused to let fall. Evelyn continued, her voice softening but not weakening. "We will also establish the Hannah Whitmore Pediatric Heart Fund, dedicated to children whose families cannot afford specialized cardiac care. Not as charity for publicity. As repayment for a debt this company should have recognized long ago." The room did not applaud at first. It was too ashamed. Then one engineer began. A small, uncertain clap. Then another. Then the sound spread, not loud like victory, but deep like relief. Grant stood alone near the doors, all polish and no ground beneath him. Caleb walked toward Evelyn slowly. People parted for him now, not because he was rich, not because he had a title, but because dignity had entered the room wearing an old jacket. Evelyn held out the original file. "You deserve a position here," she said. "Whatever you want. Chief engineer. Advisory lead. Full compensation." Caleb looked at the paper, then at Lucy. "I do not need a title to become someone." Evelyn's eyes softened. "Then what do you need?" Caleb took a breath, the kind that carries years inside it. "Fix the device. Help the children. And make sure no family has to sell their future just to keep one small heart beating." Evelyn nodded, speechless for the second time since she met him. Not because he had embarrassed her, not because he had saved her company, but because even when the world finally offered him power, Caleb Whitmore asked only for mercy to reach someone else first. 3 weeks later, The children's art exhibition opened in the West Wing of Hartwell Medical, in a hallway that had once felt too cold for families to wait in. Evelyn had ordered the marble walls softened with warm lights, wooden benches, and shelves of children's books. No gold plaque carried her name. No camera crew waited at the entrance. There were only paper hearts, crooked rainbows, painted handprints, and the quiet sound of parents reading little name cards beside drawings made by children who knew hospitals too well. In the center of the hallway hung Lucy's picture, now framed behind simple glass. The blue crayon title remained untouched, The Hand That Stayed. Caleb stood in front of it with Lucy beside him, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder. He wore the same dark jacket from the product preview, pressed now, but still humble. Lucy leaned into him and whispered, "Mommy would like this, right?" Caleb looked at the drawing, at the woman in black, at the man with work boots and yellow light around his hands. His eyes shone, but his voice stayed gentle. "Yes, sweetheart." She would have loved it. Across the hallway, Evelyn paused before stepping closer. She was not wearing the armor of a boardroom that evening. No sharp black suit. No guarded smile. Just a cream sweater, a gray coat over her arm, and the tired peace of a woman learning that strength did not always mean standing alone. "It looks beautiful," she said. Lucy turned and grinned. "They spelled my name right." Evelyn smiled. "I made sure." Caleb glanced at her. "You did all this?" Evelyn looked down the hallway at the families, the nurses, the children pointing at their own artwork with shy pride. "No," she said. "They did. I only stopped getting in the way." That was the truth of her change. She had not become smaller by admitting she was wrong. She had become more human. The corrected device was still months from approval. The investigation was still moving through lawyers and boardrooms. Grant Maddox was gone from Hartwell Medical, and for the first time in years, Evelyn had stopped measuring her life by the men who had betrayed her. She measured it now by the people who stayed. Marianne appeared at the end of the hall and gave a small nod. The first families funded by the Hannah Whitmore Pediatric Heart Fund had arrived quietly, without press, without speeches. Caleb watched a young father lift his little boy so he could see a painting of a red balloon. The boy laughed, and that sound reached Caleb somewhere deeper than applause ever could. Evelyn noticed his hand tremble slightly. Not from weakness. From memory, letting go one finger at a time. She stepped beside him, close enough to be present, far enough to be respectful. "I never thanked you properly," she said. Caleb gave a faint smile. "You restored Hannah's name. That was justice. Not thanks. You helped children. That was a beginning." He looked at her then. In her eyes, there was no offer wrapped in pity, no debt pretending to be affection, no rich woman trying to rescue a poor man so she could feel redeemed. There was only quiet. Honest quiet. The kind he trusted. Evelyn slowly extended her hand. Not because she was fainting. Not because she was afraid. Not because the room demanded anything from either of them. She simply held it out, palm open, giving him the choice he had given her that first night. Caleb looked at her hand. Then at Lucy, who was pretending not to watch and failing completely. Then, with a softness that seemed to silence even the hospital hallway, he took Evelyn's hand in his. No one clapped at first. No one needed to. A nurse nearby stopped walking. Marianne lowered her eyes with a smile. Lucy leaned against her father and whispered, "Daddy." The room got quiet again. Caleb squeezed Evelyn's hand gently. Sometimes quiet means people finally understand. And maybe that was the miracle. Not a mansion. Not a headline. Not a sudden rescue from the sky. Just a single father who kept his dignity when the world mocked him. A daughter who saw a light where adults saw status. And a woman powerful enough to learn that grace is not weakness. It is the courage to stay human. If this story touched your heart, tell us in the comments what you think Caleb's quiet kindness meant to Evelyn, and whether you believe one small act of dignity can change a life. Thank you for watching until the end of this video.